I always believed that hard work would give me peace one day. For 30 long years, I worked in my small logistics company, driving trucks, loading boxes, managing people, and sometimes staying up all night just to keep the business alive. I wasn't rich, but I never gave up. Every time I felt tired, I would tell myself, one day I'll rest. One day, I'll buy a quiet house where no one can bother me. That dream kept me alive through everything. When I turned 62, I finally sold the company. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was time. My wife had passed away years ago, my son had his own life, and I didn't want to chase money anymore. All I wanted was peace, a place to watch the sunrise, drink coffee, and hear the birds instead of the sound of trucks and deadlines. So, I bought a farmhouse, an old one, just outside a small town in Vermont. The first time I saw it, my heart felt lighter. It wasn't perfect. The paint was peeling, the barn roof was half rusted, and the porch creaked when I walked. But it was mine. And more than that, it felt like home. The air was clean. The nights were quiet. The fields stretched out wide, and when the wind blew, the grass danced like waves in the ocean. I fixed a few things myself, the porch railing, the old fence, even the mailbox. Every nail I hammered felt like a promise to myself. This is where I'll grow old peacefully. For a few weeks, everything was calm. I'd wake up early, feed the chickens left behind by the old owner, and walk with my dog Daisy. I'd sit on the porch with my coffee and think, I finally made it. Sometimes I'd smile for no reason. After years of rushing, I finally learned to slow down. But peace never lasts forever. One evening, as the sky turned orange, my phone rang. It was my son, Ethan. He rarely called unless he needed something. Still, I answered with a smile. Hey, son. How are you doing? He sounded excited, too excited. Dad, I've been thinking, he said. You know that startup I told you about? We're growing fast. We need a new space, big, open, and away from the city. Your farmhouse is perfect. I frowned a little. Perfect for what? For our new headquarters, he said quickly. We'll set up offices, maybe a studio. You can still stay there, of course, maybe in the guest room or something. But we'll modernize the place. It'll be great for everyone. His voice was full of that fast, sharp energy that only young people have. The kind that believes everything is possible if you just push hard enough. I didn't answer right away. I looked around at my quiet living room. The old wooden floors, the fireplace, the sound of crickets outside. Ethan, I said softly, this house isn't for business. It's for rest. I didn't buy it to work again. He laughed. Dad, come on. You've had your time to rest. Don't you want to be part of something exciting? We could even name one of the buildings after you. Something inside me broke a little at that. Not because he wanted to use my house, but because he thought rest was useless. He didn't understand that peace was the reward for all those years of struggle. Ethan, I said quietly, I worked for 30 years so I could have one place in the world that's just mine. Let me have that. There was a pause. Then his tone changed, colder, sharper. Dad, you're being emotional. This is business. Don't make it hard for me. We'll talk when I come there. Before I could say another word, he hung up. For a long time, I just sat there listening to the quiet. The crickets, the wind, the ticking of the clock, all of it suddenly felt heavy. My own son, the boy I raised, fed, and taught, was talking to me like I was standing in the way of his next deal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept walking around the farmhouse, touching the walls, the tables, the windows. Every part of that place held a piece of my dream, the dream of peace I had waited my whole life for. In the dim light, I stopped in front of the barn. The big red doors stood there, still strong even after years of weather. My company once stored goods in barns like this, heavy boxes, long nights, endless work. And now, here I was again, standing before another barn. Only this time I wanted it to be my quiet place, not another battlefield. But I knew Ethan. He wasn't going to stop. He'd come with his team, his plans, and his money. He'd treat me like another old man standing in the way of progress. That's when something inside me shifted. I realized that silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence means planning. If my son wanted to turn my peace into his profit, then I would let him walk right into a lesson he'd never forget. I turned off the porch light, took one last look at the barn, and said to myself, let him come. Then I went inside, locked the door, and smiled for the first time that night. Because the next chapter of my life, and his, was about to begin. The morning air was cool and heavy with fog when I woke up. Daisy barked once, looking toward the long road that led to the farmhouse. I knew what that meant. They were coming. My son Ethan always arrived early when he wanted something. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stood on the porch, watching the dust rise in the distance. 3 shiny cars appeared, driving faster than anyone should on a country road. The sound of city tires grinding against gravel felt wrong here. Too loud. Too sharp. The cars stopped right in front of the gate. Ethan stepped out first, wearing dark glasses and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him were 5 young people, his team, I guessed. They looked like they had never touched dirt in their lives. Laptops, sneakers, expensive jackets. All of them smiling like they were about to start a new adventure. "Dad," Ethan said cheerfully, walking toward me with open arms. "You look good. This place is exactly how I imagined it." I smiled a little and said, "I'm glad you came, Ethan." He didn't notice my tone. He was too busy looking around, the barn, the fields, the porch. Every few seconds, he whispered something to his friends. I heard bits and pieces. "We'll level this part. The barn can be the workspace, maybe solar panels here." I stood quietly, holding my cup, just listening. Every word he said made the house feel smaller, like he was cutting pieces of my peace away with every sentence. His wife, Sarah, walked up behind him. She smiled kindly at me. "It's beautiful here, Dad," she said softly. I could tell she meant it. She always had gentler eyes than my son. Ethan clapped his hands and said, "Okay, team. Let's take a look around before we call the contractors." One of his team members, a tall man with messy hair, laughed and said, "Man, this is prime property. We'll have to tear down a lot, but once it's rebuilt, it'll be amazing." Tear down. That word hit me hard. I turned my face away so they wouldn't see the anger in my eyes. This was the house I built my peace in. Every brick, every nail, I had touched it with my own hands. And now these strangers wanted to destroy it like it was nothing. Ethan noticed me staring at the barn. "Oh, don't worry about that old thing," he said with a laugh. "We'll turn it into a modern meeting hall. You'll love it when it's done." I took a deep breath. "Before you do anything," I said quietly, "I want to show you something inside the barn." He raised an eyebrow. "Now?" "Yes," I said. "If this place is going to change, you should at least see what's already here." Ethan shrugged. "All right, team, field trip. Let's see what Dad's got in there." They followed me toward the barn, still laughing and talking. The sound of their sneakers crunching over dry leaves made me feel strange, like they were walking over memories instead of ground. When I reached the big red doors, I paused. My hand rested on the handle. I could feel the weight of everything I had planned waiting behind those doors. "Dad," Ethan asked, "what's inside? Don't tell me it's another one of your old trucks." I smiled faintly. "Something like that." I pushed the door slightly, but not enough for them to see. "Before I open it," I said, turning to face them, "I want to tell you a story." Ethan groaned. "Dad, come on. Just listen," I said, calm but firm. My voice was quiet, but it made him stop talking. "When I built my company, I started from nothing. I slept in the office, ate cold food, and worked through storms. For 30 years, I carried every box, signed every paper, and drove every mile myself. And when I sold it, I didn't sell the memories. I didn't sell the lessons. I didn't sell the respect I earned." I looked at him. "I built that company to have a place where I could rest. This farmhouse isn't just land, Ethan. It's what's left of my peace." He looked uncomfortable for a moment. His team shifted uneasily. Then he smiled again, brushing it off. "Dad, I understand, really. But let's be realistic. You can't keep holding on to old things. The world's changing." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm showing you this." I slowly pulled the barn doors open. The sound of the hinges echoed through the air like thunder. Dust floated out into the sunlight. Ethan's team went quiet. From where they stood, they couldn't see everything inside, not yet. Only the dim light reflecting off rows of something metallic. "What's that?" one of them asked. "You'll see soon enough," I said. "Tomorrow you'll come back, and I'll show you everything properly. But remember this moment. The wind, the barn, the quiet, because by tomorrow evening, none of you will forget what you see here." Ethan frowned. "You're being mysterious again, Dad. What's going on?" I smiled, calm and slow. "You'll find out. Just promise me you'll come tomorrow morning. All of you. I'll have everything ready." He sighed, shaking his head. "All right, Dad. You win. We'll come. But seriously, I hope you're not planning something crazy." I didn't answer. I just looked up at the open sky. "Crazy," I said softly. "No. Just fair." They laughed again, not understanding. They thought it was all a joke. They said their goodbyes and left, still talking about plans, designs, and profit. When the sound of their cars faded, I closed the barn doors slowly and locked them. I turned toward the house, and Daisy followed me quietly, her tail low. The wind carried the smell of rain. I looked up at the sky and whispered to myself, "Tomorrow, Ethan. Tomorrow you'll see what 30 years of silence can do." That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, not because I was sad or scared. This time, I was calm, focused, ready. The lesson was already waiting behind those barn doors. And soon my son would walk right into it. The next morning was quiet, but the air felt heavy, like the sky was holding its breath. I woke up early, long before sunrise. I didn't eat breakfast, didn't make coffee. I just sat by the window waiting. The barn stood in the mist, dark and still, like it was hiding something. At exactly 9, I heard the sound of engines again. Ethan always arrived on time when it came to business. I watched as the same 3 cars stopped in front of the gate. He stepped out with his team, all smiling, full of energy and confidence, like they were about to make history. Ethan called out, "Morning, Dad. Ready to show us your big surprise?" I opened the porch door and walked toward them slowly. "Yes," I said calmly. "Come to the barn. Everything you need to see is there." They followed me, laughing and whispering. One of his friends carried a camera, saying they should film the before and after of the property for their investors. I smiled quietly. They'll get an after, all right, I thought. Just not the one they expect. When we reached the barn, I stopped at the big red doors. The air was still. Only the sound of the wind moved through the fields. Ethan stood next to me, hands in his pockets. "So what's inside, Dad? Don't keep us waiting." I looked at him for a long moment. He was my son, the same boy who used to sit on my shoulders when he was little, who once cried when I missed his school play because I was working. Somewhere along the line, that boy had turned into a man who saw everything as business, even family. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt ready. I reached for the door handle. "Before I open this," I said softly, "I want you to remember something. You once told me I wasted my life building a small company. You said I should have aimed bigger, moved faster. Do you still think that?" He smirked. "Well, yeah, Dad. You worked hard, but you could have made more if you'd taken risks. That's what business is about." I nodded slowly. "You're right," I said. "Business is about risk." And with that, I pushed the doors open. The sunlight spilled into the barn, revealing everything inside. Rows and rows of wooden boxes covered the floor. Each box had a label in neat handwriting. "Hale Logistics Records, Confidential." Ethan frowned. "What is this?" "These," I said, walking inside, "are the last 20 years of my company's history. Contracts, deals, shipping records, ownership documents, and something more." His friend stepped forward, curious. One of them opened a box and gasped. "These are all original documents," he said. "Not digital copies." Ethan laughed nervously. "Dad, this is old stuff. Why are you showing me this?" I looked at him. "Because you never asked what I did before I retired. You never cared to know how I built everything. You thought I just ran trucks. But I also built the ground your company stands on." He frowned again. "What are you talking about?" I pointed to a framed paper hanging on the barn wall. "That's the original deed of my logistics company. When I sold it, I didn't sell the land under the main office. I bought it back and registered it under my name. The same land where your startup's headquarters now sits." Ethan's smile disappeared. His team stopped talking. The cameraman lowered his lens slowly. I continued, calm and firm. "I told you yesterday that I built this company from nothing. That wasn't a story. You thought you were buying this farmhouse from a tired old man. But this farmhouse, this land, and that company you think you own? All of it connects back to me." He blinked, confused and angry. "No, that's not possible. Our investors." "We'll soon find out," I said, "that they've been renting land owned by me. And since your company used it without permission for expansion, well, let's just say the law is not on your side." Right then, footsteps echoed from behind the barn. 2 men walked in, Mr. Conway, my old lawyer, and Sheriff Mason, the local officer. Both serious, both silent. Ethan turned pale. "Dad, what is this?" Mr. Conway nodded politely. "Mr. Hale, your father asked us to come to witness today's meeting. Everything he said is legally correct. The documents here prove ownership of the original property. And your company's recent project? It's operating without a valid lease." Ethan's voice cracked. "Dad, why would you do this?" I looked straight into his eyes. "Because, Ethan, you came here to take something that wasn't yours. You thought I was old and weak. You thought you could build your dream on top of mine. You forgot who taught you how to build in the first place. He took a step back. You planned this? Yes, I said simply. I've been planning it since the day you said, "You've had your time, Dad." Silence filled the barn. The only sound was the wind pushing through the cracks in the old wood. Sarah looked like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Finally, I turned toward Ethan and said, "You wanted to turn my peace into your profit, but you never asked yourself, what if the old man who built everything still knows how to fight quietly?" He stood there, speechless. His team whispered among themselves, nervous and scared. Mr. Conway handed Ethan a folder, the legal proof of everything I had said. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Son, I suggest you and your people leave this property for now. There's legal work to be done." Ethan didn't argue. He just stared at me, disbelief all over his face. Slowly, he walked out of the barn, his team following behind like shadows. I watched them go, their fancy cars shrinking in the distance until they disappeared. Then I looked around the barn, at the boxes, the papers, the dust floating in the light. I wasn't proud or happy, just quiet. I closed the doors slowly and whispered, "Some lessons can't be taught in words." Daisy wagged her tail beside me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly still. The fight was over, but the story wasn't. Because sometimes, even when you win, the heart still remembers what it lost. And I knew the hardest part was yet to come. After the barn meeting, the road was quiet again. The wind moved through the fields like a slow breath. I stood there for a long time, my hand still on the door, listening to the sound of nothing. Daisy sat at my feet. She looked up at me as if to ask, "Is it over?" It was over, but not finished. Mr. Conway and Sheriff Mason stayed for tea at the kitchen table. We didn't say much. The lawyer reminded me that he would file the notices and send copies to Ethan's investors. The sheriff said he would record the visit in his log, in case anyone tried something foolish. I thanked them both. When they left, the house felt big and empty, but not lonely. More like a church after the last prayer. That evening, I walked the fence line until the sun fell behind the trees. I ran my hand along the old wood. Every board I had fixed held steady. My body felt tired, but my mind was calm. I slept for the first time in days. The next morning, I found a message from Sarah. She asked if she could come by. I told her yes. She arrived alone, no shiny cars, no loud shoes. She brought a pie from town and stood on the porch with tears in her eyes. "Dad," she said, voice shaking, "I'm sorry. I tried to tell Ethan to slow down. He doesn't listen to me when he gets like that." I poured coffee for us both. "You are always welcome here," I said. "But I need you to hear me. This house is not a project. It is a promise." She nodded, crying quietly. "I know." She looked toward the barn. "What will happen now?" "Nothing dramatic," I said. "The truth will do the work. Investors do not like surprises. They will pull back. He will have to face them. It will hurt. But pain is a teacher that never wastes a lesson." 2 days later, the first calls came. Ethan's team lost a contract. Then another. A week later, their lead investor froze the next round. I heard all of this from Sarah, who sent short, sad messages at night. "He's angry. He's scared. He's not sleeping." I kept my replies simple. "I know. Let him breathe. The ground must cool before you build again." One morning, after the frost had lifted from the grass, I saw a figure at the gate. Ethan walked in slowly, no glasses, no grin, no team. He looked 10 years older. He stopped at the bottom step and stared at his shoes. "Dad," he said, "I'm sorry." I felt my chest tighten, not with pride, not with victory, but with something softer. I let him stand there a moment longer. Then I nodded toward the chair. "Sit," I said. "Coffee." He sat. His hands were shaking. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said. "Bigger, faster, smarter. I didn't see you. I only saw the map in my head." "You saw a clean field," I said. "You forgot there were roots." He rubbed his face. "I lost almost everything. The team is leaving. The investors are done. I deserve it. I was cruel to you." "You were careless," I said. "Cruelty is a choice. Carelessness is a habit. Both break things. Only one is easier to forgive." He looked up, eyes red. "Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. I went inside and came back with 2 envelopes. I placed them on the table between us. "In the first," I said, tapping the thick one, "is a copy of the trust one created last year. This farm is in it now. It cannot be sold or leased. Not by me, not by you, not by anyone. It belongs to the land, to peace, to the years that paid for it. That door is closed. He swallowed and nodded. I understand. In the second, I said, tapping the thin one, is a key. It opens a small brick building in town. I bought it when I sold the company. It has good light, old floors, and fast internet. If you still want to build something real, you can lease it from me for $1 a year, on one condition. His eyes searched mine. What condition? You build a company that doesn't eat people. You hire slow. You tell the truth. You don't use family as stepping stones. And once a week, you come here for dinner. No laptops. No pitches. Just food, stories, and the sound of crickets. Agreed. He let out a breath that sounded like a broken laugh. Agreed, he said. I don't deserve this. Grace isn't earned, I said. It's given where it might grow. He opened the thin envelope and held the key like it was a small bird. We sat on the porch without speaking, watching the wind lean through the grass. After a while, he said, What do I tell the investors? The truth, I said. Tell them you found your blind spot. Tell them your runway is now longer and your plan is now smaller. Tell them you traded speed for sense. Some will leave. That is a gift. He nodded again. We walked to the barn together. I pushed the door open, and the dust rose like a quiet curtain. He looked at the boxes, at the framed papers, at the place where his pride had cracked. This room will follow me everywhere, he said. Good, I answered. Let it. Days turned into weeks. He met with people. Some slammed doors. Some listened. He hired 2, then 1 more, slowly, carefully. On Sundays, he and Sarah came for dinner. We ate simple food. We talked about weather and fences and the best way to stack wood. Sometimes we said nothing at all, and it still felt like a full conversation. One late evening, after Sarah went inside to help with dishes, Ethan stayed on the porch. The stars were clear. He asked, Dad, why did you bring the sheriff that day? So we would not raise our voices, I said. Fear makes men shout. Law makes them listen. He smiled at that, small, true. And the trust? Why make it unbreakable? Because love without a boundary becomes a bargain, I said. I love you. I will help you. But the farm is not part of the price. He looked out at the dark line of the barn. I think I finally understand. We sat there until the night cooled our tea. Before he left, he stood and hugged me, awkward at first, then steady. Thank you, he whispered, for the lesson. After they drove away, I walked to the barn alone. I touched the door, then the frame, then the old iron latch. The wood was warm from the day. I closed my eyes and felt the quiet settle. Here is the twist no one saw on the day those doors opened. I did not save the farm from my son. I saved my son with the farm. The boundary kept the house safe. The key gave him a way forward. The lesson was not revenge, it was a road. In the months that followed, grass still bent to the wind. The porch still creaked. Daisy still chased shadows like they were real things. Peace returned. Not the kind that hides from noise, but the kind that can sit beside it and not move. Sometimes, near sundown, Ethan would arrive with new papers and old questions. We would talk. We would argue a little. We would laugh. And every time he left, he would touch the barn door with his hand, as if to thank it for being strong enough to stop him and kind enough to teach him. The world kept turning. The farm kept breathing. And the boy I raised became a man I could trust. That was the lesson. And it held.